You ever have one of those moments when someone pushes you way too far, like they think the world revolves around them? Well, this story is about one of those moments. Picture this. I'm sitting on a plane with my service dog beside me, calm, quiet, trained, doing his job. And then Karen walks in, loud, entitled, and already acting like she owns the place. She looks at me, then my dog, and says the words I'll never forget. That dog needs to move. I paid for that seat. What she didn't know, the pilot flying this plane happened to be my best friend. And what happened next turned into a story that the entire airport still talks about. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today's story is one of those real-life karma tales that'll make you shake your head, laugh, and maybe cheer a little at the end. So grab a snack, settle in, and let me tell you how one entitled passenger tried to kick my service dog out of his seat and ended up getting herself kicked off the plane instead. This happened about a year ago. I was flying home after a 3-week work trip. I travel often, and because of my disability, I always fly with my service dog, Shadow. He's a black lab, gentle, focused, and one of the calmest dogs you'll ever meet. Airlines are usually great about accommodating service animals. I always book the bulkhead seat, so Shadow has space to lie comfortably at my feet. Everything's cleared ahead of time. Documents, vet letters, training proof, you name it. That morning the airport was busy but normal. I checked in, went through security, and Shadow drew a few smiles from TSA officers who knew him by name. I even stopped for a coffee before boarding. Little did I know, the next 2 hours would become one of the wildest travel stories of my life. I boarded early. Service animal passengers usually do, and Shadow settled into his spot under the seat. The flight attendants greeted him like an old friend. Everything was perfect. Then, as boarding continued, I heard it, that unmistakable sound of trouble approaching, high heels, heavy sighs, and muttered complaints. Enter Karen. She was probably in her late 40s, perfectly styled hair, designer bag, and that looked like she was too important to wait in line with the rest of us. She marched down the aisle, scanning seat numbers. Then she stopped right next to me. "Excuse me," she said sharply. "You're in my seat," I smiled politely. "Actually, this is 10A, that's my assigned seat." She glanced down at Shadow, her face twisting in disgust. "Well, your dog is in my foot space." I paid for extra legroom. It explained that Shadow was a trained service animal, and that this was the space provided by the airline for accessibility. But she wasn't hearing it. Don't care what kind of dog it is. I'm allergic. I can't sit near that thing. At this point, the passengers nearby were already watching. You could practically feel the tension building. A flight attendant, bless her soul, came over immediately. She calmly explained that service animals are allowed by law, and the airline had verified everything ahead of time. Karen huffed, rolled her eyes dramatically, and crossed her arms. "Then move me somewhere else. I shouldn't have to suffer because he brought a dog." The attendant said the flight was fully booked, but she'd check for any last-minute changes. Meanwhile, Karen wasn't done. She leaned closer to me and whispered, "You people always expect special treatment. It's ridiculous." That's when Shadow lifted his head slightly and placed it on my knee, his way of checking if I was okay. My dog had more emotional intelligence in that moment than Karen ever would. The attendant came back and said kindly, "Ma'am, the only available seat is in the back row, next to the restroom." You could almost see the fire ignite in Karen's eyes. "Absolutely not. I paid for extra comfort. That dog needs to move." The attendant stayed professional. "Ma'am, the dog is a service animal and cannot be relocated. If you'd like to deplane, we can rebook you on another flight." But of course, Karen wasn't about to lose. Not yet. As the last few passengers boarded, Karen started performing. She raised her voice so everyone could hear. "This is ridiculous. I have a medical condition. That animal is a health hazard." Now, I have zero interest in public confrontations, so I tried to stay calm. "Ma'am," I said quietly, "Shadow's clean, vaccinated, and working. He's not a pet." "He's helping me," Karen scoffed. "Helping you, please. You look fine to me." That was the moment the plane went silent. People turned around in disbelief. One guy even muttered, "Oh, she didn't just say that." Before I could respond, a voice came over the intercom. "Flight attendants, prepare for departure." That voice? It belonged to Captain Jake, my best friend since college. And yes, he was the pilot that day. Now, Jake and I go way back. He knew about my disability, knew Shadow, and had even helped me during flight training before I had to step back from my career. When he saw the commotion from the cockpit window, he called one of the attendants to ask what was happening. The attendant filled him in, an entitled passenger refusing to sit because of a service dog. Jake simply said, "Hold boarding. I'm coming out." The cabin doors were still open when Jake stepped out of the cockpit, calm, authoritative, and wearing that pilot's confidence-like armor. "Ma'am," he said evenly, "I'm Captain Wilson. I understand there's a problem?" Karen immediately switched tones, saccharine sweet. "Oh, Captain." "Yes, thank you. This passenger's dog is in my seat and I'm allergic. Surely you can make an exception." Jake looked at her, then at Shadow, who was sitting perfectly still, tail tucked, eyes up like a soldier on duty. "Ma'am," he said, "this passenger is pre-approved for a service animal accommodation. That seat belongs to them and their service dog. You, on the other hand, have two choices. Sit in your assigned seat or deplane." Karen blinked. "You can't talk to me like that. I'm a paying customer." Jake didn't even flinch. "And I'm the captain. My responsibility is everyone's safety, including his." He nodded at Shadow. "If you can't comply with federal accessibility law, you won't be flying today." The whole plane started murmuring, people whispering, phones quietly recording. Karen's face turned bright red. "You'll regret this," she hissed. "I'll call corporate. Jake cut her off with a calm smile. "Ma'am, I'm corporate right now." He gestured toward the aisle. "Let's go." For a split second, I thought she might actually try to argue more, but when she saw two ground crew members waiting at the front, she realized the fight was over. With a dramatic sigh, she grabbed her bag, muttering curses under her breath as she stomped off the plane, and the second she was gone, the cabin erupted in applause. Jake came over, crouched next to Shadow, and scratched his ears. "Good boy, Shadow." Keeping the peace as always, I couldn't help but laugh. The tension melted away. Passengers were smiling, shaking their heads, whispering things like, "She got what she deserved." A few minutes later, Jake returned to the cockpit, and we finally took off. The flight was peaceful, quiet, and honestly, kind of therapeutic after all that chaos. When we landed, a few passengers stopped to thank me for staying calm and for letting them witness instant karma in action. And apparently Karen's outburst didn't end quietly. Word spread fast. Airport security met her at the gate to file a formal incident report for disruption and refusal to comply with airline policy. As for me, Shadow and I just headed home like we always do, quiet, steady, and grateful for good people who still stand up when it counts. Here's the thing. People like Karen exist everywhere. They think rules don't apply to them, and that their inconvenience matters more than someone else's rights. But that day reminded me of something powerful. Calm confidence always beats loud entitlement. Shadow didn't bark once. He didn't growl. He just did his job, quietly proving that respect, discipline, and patience always win in the end. And Captain Jake? He showed everyone that authority, when used with integrity, can shut down entitlement faster than any argument. So yeah, Karen demanded my service dog seat. But in the end, my pilot friend gave her the only seat she truly deserved, the one off the plane. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe for more real-life karma stories, and drop a comment below. What would you have done if Karen tried to kick your service dog off the plane? Thanks for watching, and remember, kindness might fly economy, but it always lands first.